and I decided that I would be leaving when I needed to no matter what she said. About 10 minutes early, I got out of the pool and put my equipment away. The substitute coach stopped me and told me to get back in the pool and finish the current set, which if I had done would have made me extra late because the practice was running late already. I repeated myself, telling her that I had to leave to get ready for work, and she told me to put my cap back on. I then told her how I admired her as a coach. She was always learning new coaching techniques, and she had so much experience and knowledge, but I had to leave. I calmly stated that my job isn't optional and that my supervisor expected me to be there early. Even after all this, she was still upset and told me to get back in the pool. I firmly said that I was not asking for permission. I was telling her that I was leaving, and then I walked out. She was gone by the time I returned to the pool deck to begin work. I've never stood up to an adult like that, and I'm wondering if I made the right decision. I don't want her to tell my normal coach and have him be upset either. Am I the butthole? Nah, OP, it's swimming practice. It's not like it was an official meet or anything. You had every right to leave early, and to be honest, she was being super unreasonable. In fact, I would say that you were handling that situation like an adult, and she was handling that situation like a kid. OP, one thing that you'll discover in life as you get older is that some people out there, when they get a tiny bit of authority, just completely let it go to their head. For her, this wasn't about you finishing your practice. This was about her giving you an order and her getting pissed off because you didn't listen to her. OP, I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes. I'm giving her 1.5 out of 5 buttholes. Am I the butthole for telling my pregnant daughter-in-law that the world doesn't revolve around her? I'm a 54-year-old woman. My husband Rick and I, who's 57, have 3 kids. The oldest, Kurt, who's 29, is married to Becky, who's 28. She's normally a good daughter-in-law, and I try to be a good mother-in-law. We've had a pretty good relationship through the years. Issues have only popped up in the last few months since we're now expecting a baby in November. It's relevant to the situation that Kurt is technically my stepson, but I'm the only mother he's ever known. Becky has become increasingly difficult. She expects everyone to bend to her will because I'm pregnant, or because I'm the mother of your grandchild. Recently, Rick and Kurt were talking about our finances, and Becky started making suggestions about us saving money for our grandbaby. That same day, I made lunch for everyone. I cooked a separate dish for Becky because she said she didn't want to eat cold cuts. She made a few comments about the cold cuts that she didn't even have to eat. She also made a few comments about the wine that we served. She doesn't want Kurt to drink while she's pregnant, but he didn't agree to this. My husband and I have a second home that we just refinished. This home has 3 floors, and it's been in the works for years, so our kids have been very excited to go all summer. We're all set to go for our first trip in July. The issue that came up is that my 2 other kids, Tim and Cassie, plan to have fun on this trip. They want to invite their friends over to the house, go to an amusement park, go scuba diving, etc. When Becky and Kurt were over last weekend, my other 2 kids were talking about their plans, and Becky got upset because she was pregnant. She said this trip shouldn't be all about drinking. It's not, and that we should ban alcohol from the house. She also said that next year's trip would not include any get-togethers with friends because she'll have a small child. Tim told her not to worry about it because she just didn't have to go on all the events like scuba diving with them. Becky called me and said that she was upset about the plans. She said that we need to respect the fact that she can't participate in all the activities that we're planning. I told her there are plenty of things she can participate in and not to worry about what the other kids are doing. She then said that she really thinks that I should limit the drinking and partying. I informed her that I have no intention of limiting anything, since this is everyone else's vacation as well, and all the drinking can take place on the back deck. I told her she could have the bedroom upstairs in the front so she wouldn't be bothered by the noise, but she was mad that she would have to walk up all the steps. She also accused me of caring less because Kurt isn't my son, which is just not true. At the end of our conversation, I told her that she could get a rental to have her own space, but she accused me of trying to exclude her. I reminded her that she spent many nights out drinking when she was their age, and that the world can't revolve around her just because she's pregnant. Am I the butthole? OP, let me get this straight. This is your house that you and your husband paid for, and you're inviting your family to a free vacation, and this woman is trying to tell you how to handle your vacation? No, OP. Your house, your rules. Just because she can't do fun things doesn't mean everyone else can't do fun things either. OP, I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes. I'm giving Becky 2 out of 5 buttholes. OP, be sure to tell Becky that I look forward to reading stories about her on r/entitled parents. Am I the butthole for refusing to go to my brother's wedding if my son can't go? My 30-year-old brother's soon-to-be wife, Tara, who's 26, went to the same high school as me. She was 1 grade below me, but we all knew each other. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I have a 5-year-old son with an ex-girlfriend who also went to the school with us. My ex and my brother's girlfriend hated each other. They were on the same drill team, and I don't know, they were jealous of each other or something. It was some old petty BS high school rivalry. Then I guess things got worse because they were both crushing on the same guy, and the guy picked my ex after he rejected Tara. I hooked up with my ex in college. It was a brief thing. We broke up right before my son Jason was born. He's with me full time now, and my ex is in the picture sometimes, but not that much. I found out over a year ago that my brother was in a relationship with Tara, and now they're engaged and gonna get married in November. I haven't been around Tara much because I'm busy with my own life. When invitations went out, my brother called me. He said that Tara didn't want my son Jason being at their wedding because he's the son of my ex. For clarity, Tara has never even met my son before. She just doesn't like the idea of her sworn enemy's son being at her wedding. I didn't think that he was serious because all of that happened years ago, and you know, we're adults now. My ex isn't even in our lives, so it's not like she'll be there. I kind of got mad at my brother that he'd be cool with his own nephew not being at his wedding. All of my other siblings are bringing their kids. My brother pleaded me to go along with this because he wants her to be happy on their special day. So I said, you know what, fine. But if my son isn't allowed at the wedding, then I won't be going either. Now my brother is mad at me for turning this into a big deal because he wants his family there. But he's just caught between a rock and a hard place. My parents agreed that she's being ridiculous and are berating my brother. My other siblings think that I should have just agreed and not turned this whole thing into a bigger drama. So I'm on the fence about how I handled things here. If it was a no-kids wedding, then yeah, I'd get that it's their special day. But my son is the only one not allowed to be there, and I don't feel right excluding him from something that happened over 10 years ago. Am I the butthole? Alright, honestly, I see no buttholes in this situation. OP, you're completely justified for not going. He's your 5-year-old kid. Where you go, he should go. So if you want to say that you're a package deal, then you have every right to do that. On the other hand, it's Tara's special day, and if she doesn't want your son there, then she doesn't want your son there. Sure, it's silly and petty, but so what? It's her wedding. If she doesn't want to be reminded of someone from her past, then she has every right to request that. Tara also gets 0 out of 5 buttholes. And last but not least, I totally understand where your brother's coming from. He wants to make his wife happy, and he should try to make his wife happy. Also, he wants his brother to be at his wedding, because why wouldn't he? I'm sure that he wants his nephew there too, but he's getting married, which means that he has to support his wife. For that reason, I'm giving the brother 0 out of 5 buttholes. So even though everyone here is totally justified, I think that what I would do in this situation is go to the wedding without my son. Like, yeah, it sucks and you're kind of swallowing your pride here, but I feel like this would be a nice way to extend an olive branch to Tara. After all, when Tara marries your brother, she's suddenly going to have a new nephew, your son. They don't necessarily have to have a relationship, and that might never happen, but still, it would be nice if you made an effort to make a relationship between them. Things are already bad between Tara and your nephew, so don't make things worse by pissing off your brother on his special day too. I say swallow your pride, go to the wedding alone, then like maybe a month afterwards approach Tara and be like, listen, I know that you don't like my ex, and you never have to see my ex as far as I'm concerned. But still, you're my sister-in-law now, and my son is very important to me, so I was wondering if we could try to start building a relationship between you and my son. Am I the butthole for letting our kids play in the pool where a neighbor's kid died and for not getting rid of the pool? So when my husband and I were looking at houses, we found this great house with a pool in the backyard. Normally it would have been out of our price range, but this one was a great deal. The reason why was because one of the neighbor's kids had drowned in the pool last summer. I know that it's really morbid, but my husband and I discussed it and we decided that we could look past it. I mean, normally we could never afford a house like this. It was already big enough that our kids could finally have their own bedrooms. When we moved in, the pool was empty, and we didn't see the point in filling it since, at the time, it was too cold out to go swimming anyway. Since it's getting hot out now, we decided to finally fill it last week. Our kids had a great time swimming, and we were having fun laughing and playing games. Later, though, our husband was confronted by our neighbor, the one whose kid died, saying that the sounds of kids playing in the pool was traumatizing to his family, and that we were horrible for letting our kids play in that pool after what happened. Since then, we've learned from an online post that several other people in the neighborhood similarly feel that we're being insensitive by letting our kids play in that pool. Many of them think that the right thing to do would have been to get rid of the pool. Even after considering all that, though, we don't want to get rid of our pool. We've never had a pool before, and our family is really enjoying it. Also, OP points out that they have a fence surrounding the yard, and the child in question died during a swimming pool party. Alright, OP, so first off, I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes. I think what you're doing is completely reasonable. While I definitely do sympathize with the neighbor's grief, I think that they're being a little bit ridiculous about this. If you're traumatized by living next to the pool where your kid drowned, then don't live next to the pool where your kid drowned. I get that moving is really expensive and not everyone can afford it, and it's a really big deal. I totally get that. But that being said, you can't expect your new neighbors to bend over backwards to accommodate your grief. Like I said, I sympathize with their grief, but I don't agree with their logic. So I'm giving the neighbors 0 out of 5 buttholes. That being said, they're just wrong about the situation. I think in actuality, the only buttholes here are all the other neighbors who are criticizing you, the new neighbors, for something that's completely out of your control. Am I the butthole for refusing to attend an apology dinner after my mother-in-law called me a bad mother at my son's funeral? I lost my son to congenital heart disease, and he didn't survive the open heart surgery at the age of 1 year and 6 months. He was the greatest blessing I had in my life. Everyone kept telling me that things will get better with time. I know that no matter how much time goes by, I'm still gonna miss my baby and everything sweet about him. My mother-in-law and I were in constant conflict. Things had always been bad between us, but in those last months, we reached our limit. She kept getting involved in my son's treatment and criticized every decision that I made, claiming that I didn't know how to handle my son's illness. We went low contact, but she kept causing issues occasionally. My husband was torn between our son's illness and his mother's issues. When my son passed away, she came to the funeral and caused a scene by arguing with me, knowing that I had no energy for it. She used the fact that everyone was there so she could say that it was my fault that my son was born sick and I didn't take care of him properly. That I didn't listen to her when she suggested other ways to treat his condition. And that I was the one who took their grandchild away from them and caused them this heartache. She then loudly called me a bad mother. I had no idea how I kept my composure and kept standing. My mom and sisters responded by telling her to leave. My husband was just sitting down, crying. She then went on to tell everyone that I kicked her out of the funeral as a way to further hurt her. And she lied, saying that I convinced my husband to ban her from visiting her grandson's grave. My husband later sent his side of the family an email talking about his mother's behavior during and after our son's illness, and telling them that he would no longer be seeing her. This led to his side of the family criticizing us, saying that his mother was just trying to do what was best for her grandbaby, and they called us selfish for assuming that we were the only ones struggling with this tragedy. We haven't seen my mother-in-law for 1 year and 8 months. I'm now 3 months pregnant. The only person who knew was my sister-in-law, but word got out. A week later, I had family members saying that I was invited to a dinner hosted by my mother-in-law so she could apologize in front of the whole family and settle this issue before the baby's born. They said that my mother-in-law was regretful and that she offered to financially provide for her grandbaby and that they wanted to see that happen. I refused, but surprisingly, my husband wants to go. His grandparents called me, saying that I have a good heart and I'm capable of forgiving her. I told them that I will never be sitting at the same table with the person who called me a bad mother at my own child's funeral. I still remember that moment vividly to this very day. My sister said that this change of heart from my mother-in-law is probably for the new baby. Maybe so, but I insisted that I'm not coming. They're saying that I'm making it hard for everyone to move on past this unresolved pain and I should really go. So a while ago I had someone message me and say, "Hey, Rslash, how come you almost never give out 5 out of 5 butthole scores?" And the reason for that is for posts like these. Because if I just hand out 5 out of 5 butthole scores to everyone who's kind of a jerk, then it won't have the same weight when I say, this person deserves 5 out of 5 buttholes. OP lost her one and only child, and this woman comes to the funeral to try to blame the mother for something that's completely out of her control? What an absolute disgusting excuse for a human being. And then afterwards, she just completely ignores you and permits the no contact, but once you get pregnant, suddenly she wants to apologize? To me, that message is clear. She doesn't care about you, OP, she just wants access to the baby. Some of you may know that I have a newborn baby, and even talking about this makes me a little bit choked up. If someone came to me and said that it was my fault that my baby died because of something that wasn't even in my control, because of a birth defect, I would never speak to that human being for the rest of my fucking life. So, OP, you get 0 out of 5 buttholes. I don't blame you. Your mother-in-law gets 5 out of 5 buttholes. Some things just can't be unsaid. That was Rslash Am I the Butthole, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day. Welcome to r/Best of Redditor Updates, where a wife cheats on her husband with the husband's best friend. Our next Reddit post comes from r/Relationship Advice. Backstory. My family used to be really close, but that changed in 2003 when my dad discovered that my mom was having an affair with John, my dad's childhood best friend. John was basically like my dad's brother back then, and he was my dad's best man in his wedding with my mom. My dad begged her to stay and work things out, but my mom ended up leaving him for John, and eventually they got a divorce, and my mom ended up marrying John 5 months later. My twin sister, Sarah, who's 27, was always the stereotypical daddy's girl. Dad spoiled her a bit more than the rest of us, and she was basically his shadow back then. And that's why it was really surprising to us that Sarah chose to stay with our mom after the divorce. Back then, me and her were the only ones to live with our parents. We have 4 other brothers. I chose to stay with Dad, and Sarah chose to live with Mom, and during the weekend, she came to stay with me and my dad. To say that the divorce and my sister choosing to stay with my mom screwed up my dad is an understatement. He tried to act like he was okay in front of us, but every single weekday for the year following the divorce, I could hear him cry himself to sleep. After the divorce, the relationship between Sarah and Dad didn't change much. He started to spoil her a bit more than usual and still remained the usual super dad, showing up to every parent-teacher conference, every ballet recital and soccer match, and being the most present dad possible. Things started to change when she suddenly changed her mind about med school. Our dad is a surgeon, and she always said that she wanted to follow in his footsteps, but Mom and John ended up pressuring her to change her career path to become a lawyer. Mom and John are both lawyers. During her studies, John started mentoring her, and they became really close after she finished her education and got a job at his law firm. Now, on to the issue. In 2017, Sarah got married, and my dad was absolutely thrilled about her wedding. He gave Sarah a blank check for her dream wedding. And to be fair, he did this for all of us. He really likes weddings. But in Sarah's case, he was really excited because she's his only daughter, and I always remembered him talking about walking her down the aisle. One day before the wedding, Sarah drops the bomb that both Dad and John will be walking her down the aisle together. Well, Dad is the most non-confrontational person to walk on this earth, and she expected him to just suck it up. But he didn't do that. They got into a huge fight, and this is the first time that I ever saw him get angry. And in the end, he didn't attend the wedding, and John ended up walking Sarah down the aisle alone. The fallout was massive. After the wedding, Dad and his side of the family basically disowned Sarah, and their relationship became non-existent. She tried to reach out after a while and make amends several times, but he simply didn't want to talk or hear about her. We expected him to turn around when she gave birth in 2018, but he doesn't even want to meet her kids. Earlier this year, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and unfortunately, the treatment didn't work, and he's terminal. Even with all that, he still doesn't want to go see her, and she doesn't understand that. I am very close to my dad, and these last few weeks are being really difficult on me. How do I convince my sister to let him go?
Then, about 2 months later, OP posted an update. A week after I posted, my dad started getting worse. His health started declining really fast. We lost him exactly 1 month ago, and it wasn't pretty. He was in a lot of pain. In the end, he was lucid enough to say goodbye to me and my older brothers. Hearing him saying what he said to me was one of the most painful and beautiful moments of my life. His words meant a lot to me. I won't say exactly what he said because I believe that it's just too personal. He said goodbye to my daughters, who are 11 months old and 2 years old. It was just like when I was a kid. He gave them a kiss on the forehead, told them to be good girls, and said that he loved them. It's something that I'll never forget, and it hurts like hell that they're too young to understand what's happening. They still ask about Grandpa, and every time I try to explain that he's not coming back, they don't seem to understand, and how can I blame them? I'm only 27 years old myself, and honestly, I don't get it. I was supposed to get a lot more years with my dad. It doesn't seem fair. The worst part is that my dad died without ever speaking to Sarah. I tried talking to him about her, but he wasn't interested in speaking with her. She started getting more desperate, but then suddenly he died. I mean, it was expected, but Sarah was in denial about it. His funeral was beautiful. A lot of people shared their stories about him. It was nice. Sarah saw Dad in the casket for the first time since the night before her wedding. She didn't recognize him. He was very skinny. She cried a lot during the whole funeral, and Mom and John tried to show up at the funeral, but my uncles were forced to kick them out of the funeral, and good effing riddance. Dad's will went the way that we expected it to. Dad's family came from old money, petrochemicals, so he's always had a lot of money. He left a little bit of money and properties divided equally among all of his kids, including Sarah. He left a trust fund, which was a lot of money for all of his grandkids, including Sarah's kids, whom he never met. It was honestly expected. My dad never really cared much about money. He just wanted us to be comfortable and assure that his grandkids all had something to support them. The tricky part was the personal belongings. He left each of us, except Sarah, a really long letter. It was really personal stuff. In my letter, he spoke to me about our story, about my childhood. It was really nice. I must have read that letter like 100 times, and I cried every single time. Oh man, I don't know about you guys, but this story is rough to get through. Okay, one of my dad's favorite hobbies was photography. He was quite an enthusiast, and the subject of his photos was pretty much always our family. As a result, we had a lot of pictures of us growing up. He gave each of us a photo album, and behind each photo, he wrote something, where it was taken, and a few words. I was honestly very surprised with this. He must have done this long before he died. It was a very thoughtful goodbye gift, something that was very typical of Dad. Sarah didn't get a letter, and her album didn't have anything written behind her photos. And when she found out about this, she had a mental breakdown. The regret was eating her alive, and it still is. She was admitted to a hospital and spent the entire week there. She's doing a bit better now and is getting a little better every day. Her husband and I are really confident in her recovery. She's sleeping and eating almost normally now. She still starts to cry randomly multiple times on a daily basis, but it's getting better. At least, that's what I'm telling myself. This brings us to last week. My wife and I discovered that we're expecting again. It wasn't planned or anything like that. My wife switched birth controls last month and she spent a week without taking the pill. It's still very early in her pregnancy, so we haven't told anyone yet. The thing is, I'm really angry. I'm angry that my future kid isn't going to be able to meet Dad. I'm effing pissed, honestly. It doesn't seem fair at all. I'm angry. I'm scared. My dad was supposed to guide me in this whole parenthood process. He was teaching me a lot about us with my daughters. I'm effing scared of doing this without him. I'm scared of not being a good father like he was to me because my kids deserve that. And that's it. The whole situation could be a lot better. I play the what if scenario in my head every day, but unfortunately, it doesn't change anything. This is honestly a bitter ending, and it doesn't seem fair at all. But the thing about life is it's actually never fair. Man, I was shocked, I tell you, shocked, that the wife and John both tried to show up to John's funeral. They ruined his life, stole his daughter, broke his heart, and then tried to crash the funeral. What the hell, man? And honestly, this might sound really harsh, and maybe it is, but I've got no sympathy for Sarah. She chose a really stupid hill to die on. She picked her cheating mom and the other man over her loving, devoted, by all accounts, perfect father. And then she expects her dad to be arm in arm with the guy who broke his heart and slept with his wife, walking his daughter down the aisle. I'm on the dad side with this one. What Sarah did there crossed a line, and I don't blame the dad for cutting the daughter out of his life. Our next Reddit post comes from r// relationship advice. My wife and her best friend accused me of having an affair, then got angry when I didn't have one. I'm a 31-year-old guy and my wife is 29. Last December, we had a baby. It was a traumatic birth, and my wife developed postpartum depression. While she was originally going to go back to work after the birth, she's been struggling enough that we decided to wait until our daughter was a year old and reassess. She's been going to therapy weekly. With my wife home full-time, I've had to work increased hours. This is something we discussed prior to making this decision, and she knew this from the start. A few weeks ago, my boss approached me about a project that would require a lot of overtime in a short amount of time. It would both be great financially and for my career. I talked to my wife about it, and she agreed that I should say yes to my boss. For the 4 weeks that I'd be working on this, my mother-in-law and my wife's best friend, Jessie, would come help out with some of the duties that I typically do. Jessie's a stay-at-home mom with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. She began coming over during the day, and they'd watch the kids with my wife. 3 weeks into my work project, it became clear that we'd need a few more weeks to get it together. I went home that night to talk to my wife about it. She said that she was okay with it, but she became very cold to me in the days after. It wasn't unusual behavior over the past few months, so I didn't think much about it, and I tried not to take it personally. During the last week of the project, I got home one night, and I saw that Jessie was still at the house. I didn't think much of it. I said hi to her and my wife, and then went to go check on our daughter. Before I could get to her room, I heard Jessie say something along the lines of, "He doesn't even stop to greet you. Definitely a sign." I turned around and asked what that was a sign of. Immediately, my wife started crying, and Jessie started accusing me of having an affair. She told me that I must hate my wife because she has postpartum depression, and that I'm not attracted to her because she gained weight from the pregnancy. But neither of those things are true. I'm trying my best to help my wife through her PPD while supporting our family. And I think she looks great how she is right now. She just doesn't want to passionately hug, and I haven't pushed her. Jessie then demanded to see my phone. I told her no. She told me that's a sign that I'm guilty. I told my wife that I would let her see my phone if she wanted to. She nodded, and something inside me broke. I guess the thought that she actually believed that I was having an affair really got to me, and that she didn't trust me after everything we've been through. Well, my wife looked through my phone and there was no evidence. Jessie started saying that I deleted the evidence. She started screaming and woke up our daughter, so I told her to get out of the house. Eventually she left, and I went to calm our daughter since my wife was still on the couch crying. When my daughter was asleep again, I sat down by my wife and tried to talk to her about what's been happening. She told me that she's been worried ever since I started working all the overtime. I told her that we talked about how good of an opportunity it was, and she agreed to letting me take on this project. She said that it was very suspicious to increase the length of the project. I told her that sometimes that happens. She wanted more evidence, so I showed her messages and emails with timestamps from work and pay stubs showing the overtime. She said that she believed me and she was sorry for doubting me. It was just that Jessie had been telling her that these were all signs that I was cheating. I asked her why she believed Jessie more than me, and why she didn't come to me with her concerns, and she didn't have a real answer. It's been a couple of weeks and the project is over. I actually scaled back at work, and I'm trying to work a little less than I was before so I can spend more time with my wife and daughter. But I feel so burnt out trying to do everything, and I've become resentful because in the back of my mind, I know that my wife doesn't trust me. I ask myself, what happens the next time I have a project? Or if I have to run errands one day? Or if I have a business trip? Am I going to come back every time to accusations that I'm cheating? I've tried bringing this up a couple of times, but my wife tells me that now's not the time and that she's tired or sad. I try to be mindful of her feelings, but I wonder if that means if I can ever have any of my own. I'm not sure what to do here. Any advice for how I can move forward? And then OP posted an update 4 days later. I approached my wife and told her that I was going to find a therapist. I didn't connect it to her accusations or anything, just said that I was having a tough time and that I needed therapy. She shrugged and told me to do whatever. The next day, I got home from work, and our bedroom and my home office were ripped apart. Things were everywhere. Important papers were scattered. I don't see my wife, but my daughter is in her room, crying. My wife left our daughter alone, and her cell phone was off. I called my in-laws and a few friends, but no one's seen her. I'm starting to get worried, and I called my mom to see if she can babysit while I go out and look for her. Before my mom can get home, my wife gets back, and Jesse's driving. Jessie doesn't come in. She hasn't been back in the house since I kicked her out because she was offended by my behavior, but my wife does. My wife is clearly upset. She's been crying. I ask what happened. I thought that at first the house might have been robbed. She starts screaming at me that I'm being unfaithful and that the therapy is a front so I can meet my mistress. I try to calm her down and tell her that's not true, but she came at me and she hit me. My nose is broken. She kind of realized what she did and sat down on the couch and went comatose, just staring at the wall. I went into my daughter's room and locked the door. I called my mom, who was already on the way, to tell her what happened, and my mother-in-law to ask her to come over and take care of my wife. I packed a bag for my daughter, and when my mom got there, we left. My wife didn't even look up at us. We dropped my daughter off with my dad, and then went to urgent care for my nose. I got blood all over my mom's new Subaru. My daughter and I are staying with my parents for a while, and my wife is staying with hers. I'm looking into getting a restraining order against Jessie. My wife and I are separating. I love her, but I won't live with someone who hurts me and who could potentially hurt our daughter. I'm not going forward with the divorce yet, with the hopes that my wife will get the treatment that she needs and we can work things out. My in-laws told me that they're looking at inpatient treatment at a local hospital, but I have everything well documented in case of an eventual custody battle. My heart's broken because I know this person isn't my wife. It's a sickness in her mind, but I need to keep myself and our daughter safe and to give her space to recover. I'm hoping that's the right decision. And then, about 2 weeks later, OP posted an update. My wife passed away early Monday morning. On Sunday night, she came to my parents' house and demanded that I give her our daughter. Because she had left our daughter alone for several hours the last time she was responsible for her and that she'd gotten physical with me, I refused. I offered to let her come in and spend some time with her while my parents and I were present, but she didn't want to come in and she wanted to take our daughter with her. She was upset, but eventually left. A few hours later, she drove her parents' car into a tree and died. The friend, Jessie, came to see my daughter and me yesterday. After some tears, she told me that she was planning to speak at my wife's funeral. She had already cleared it with my in-laws, but was letting me know as a courtesy. I told her she would not be speaking at the funeral. We fought and she left after telling me that I was a butthole and not the only person who loved my wife. I talked to my in-laws, who are adamant that Jessie be allowed to speak. She and my wife knew each other since they were kids, and my in-laws are close to her. We're all very fragile right now, and I fear that pushing this further would hurt my relationship with my in-laws, which I don't want. Still, the thought of seeing Jessie up there at my wife's funeral makes me feel sick. I don't think that I can stand to listen to her, knowing that she took joy in my wife's deteriorating mental health and picked up my wife, leaving my daughter home alone. OP, that story is unbelievably depressing. As far as I'm concerned, Jessie murdered your wife. I mean, literally, your wife is a clinically depressed person, and what did she do? She fed that depression. She fed your wife's depression until it got bigger and bigger and eventually consumed her. And on top of that, she drove your wife out of the house while your baby was completely alone, which is dangerous, unethical, and literal child abuse. You can't leave a baby unattended in a home for hours on end. What are they, nuts? OP, Jesse is an incredibly toxic and maybe even like sociopathic person. I think the best thing you can possibly do is completely cut Jesse out of your life. And if that means also cutting your wife's parents out of your life too, then honestly, I think that's necessary. And that sucks because it sounds like your in-laws are pretty much innocent of the situation, and in fact, they tried to help your wife. But if they can't understand what Jesse did to your wife, then that probably means they would allow Jesse to see the baby when the baby is in their care. And that's something that, quite frankly, I don't think you can ever allow to happen. Honestly, OP, I don't even know if I could go to her funeral. As painful as that will be, I really don't think it'll be a good idea because I think regardless of what happens, Jessie is going to try to use her speaking opportunity to tell everyone that it's your fault. I would be shocked if she doesn't say or at least imply that your cheating drove your wife to suicide. So my advice to you, OP, is to completely cut Jessie out of your life and, if necessary, cut your in-laws out of your life as well. It's super depressing and it makes a sad situation worse, but I literally think that these steps are necessary to protect the safety of your child. Jesse already endangered your child once and drove your wife to suicide. So can you really justify letting her around your baby again? I couldn't. Anyways, OP, good luck to you and your daughter. I sincerely hope the best for both of you. What Jesse did to you was tragic. That was r/best of Redditor updates, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.
How's it going, everyone? I hope you're having a great day, because today we have a story of probably one of the worst Karens that I've ever received a story about. So sit back, relax, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's just jump right into this. I'm going to call the subscriber who submitted this story Ken. So anyways, right, this all happened when Ken was literally in 5th grade. He was just a little kid, right? And actually, some people are in 5th grade watching this. You're an adult, man. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But anyways, right, so Ken was invited over to a birthday party of another one of his friends. It was a outdoors Star Wars themed birthday party. In my opinion, it sounds pretty hype. But anyways, right, you know, there was some Karens in the neighborhood that might have disagreed, as you guys will see. Anyways, Ken's mom is driving him over and they have their present ready. And, you know, they drive over, they get to the house, and there's a big sign in the front yard that says, party in the back of the house, like, just walk around to the backyard and, you know, the gate's open, just walk around. So anyways, right, Ken and his mom walk over and Ken's carrying the present, and you go into the backyard and you see all these kids around. It's kind of like Star Wars themed, so they have these like foam lightsabers. I used to have some as a kid. Those are fire. They have like stormtrooper costumes. They have a big Death Star piñata. It's fire. It's a great birthday party, right? So anyways, Ken walks over, you know, his the birthday kids, the birthday boy's mother comes over, greets them, says thank you so much. Ken's mom says, hey, where do we put the present? Points over at a table. They go over, put the present down. And Ken's having a really good time. And honestly, everyone's having a really good time at this birthday party, and it's not that loud. I mean, first of all, it's like 2 in the afternoon. It's during the summer. They have a pool. It's not like everyone else was inside being super quiet. And it wasn't like there's a curfew at 2 in the afternoon being like, you can't be reasonably loud at 2 in the afternoon during the summer because your kids are having fun in a birthday party. That's illegal, right? That's not a thing. But apparently the Karen in the neighborhood, she didn't realize this. So anyways, right, this all happened when Ken and all of his friends were just playing around, and Ken's parents and, you know, the other kids' parents that were there at the party were standing at the tables watching the kids play. And that's when this older woman walks through and into the party, and Ken turns around and assumes, oh, maybe this is the birthday kid's grandma, or maybe this is someone that they know. Maybe this is just an older mom. Who even knows, right? Woman walks in, and she says, who's in charge here? And immediately when she says this, Ken and probably everyone else at the party immediately knew that, like, something was off, that, like, no, this is not a friendly sight, right? This is not an ally. This is not someone on our team. This is definitely someone who doesn't want this party to succeed. So anyways, right, and just so you know, The party was not that loud. Sure, kids were jumping into the pool. Sure, some kids were running around screaming. If you live in a neighborhood during the summer and you don't hear that, then you're living in an old person neighborhood, man, with no grandkids coming over. It's a common thing to happen. They weren't being crazy loud. They weren't blasting music. But anyways, the Karen must have had nothing better to do, so she walked over, she saw the sign, and she invited herself into this kid's birthday party. So the Karen is like, who's in charge here? And, the birthday kid's mom walks over and says, hey, tries to, settle it down so the Karen doesn't make a scene. And she goes over, and she's like, hello, this is my son's birthday party. And the Karen's like, it's too loud. It's too loud. And, she's like, okay, well, I'll tell them to quiet down. I don't think it's been we've been unreasonably loud, but, just for your preference, I'll ask them to quiet down a little bit. And the Karen looks at her and then turns to all the kids and says, you kids better keep it down or you'll be hearing more from me. And you don't want to mess with me because that means you're messing with my husband. And then she kind of waddles away, right? So at this point, Ken and all the parents and all the kids there look at each other. And, the birthday kid's mom's like, all right, guys, can we just be a little bit quieter? You can keep doing what you're doing. Keep jumping in the pool. That's all good with me. But can you just be a little bit quieter?